The season isn't over yet for Sun Devils basketball, but they got to figure it out quick because they're wasting a historic amount of talent.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more excited than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, new customers can bet $5, and if you win, you're going to score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back in to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, and we have a long overdue conversation on deck about Sun Devils basketball. This season is not going the way that we wanted it to, and they got to figure it out quick. There's talent that's being wasted. It's where we start the conversation today, but we also got to talk about everything that's going wrong for this team before I give you some hope at the end of the show on what needs to be fixed and how it's not too late. It's never too late, as Adam Gontier once said. But my goodness, they're doing everything they can to just ruin this team. I don't know that we have seen a class come in for the Sun Devils that has matched anything like what they brought in this offseason. 2 5-star recruits and a 4-star kid. Jayden Quaintance, the highest recruited recruit in the history of the Sun Devils program. Joson, Sanon, one of the top 5 highest rated recruits ever. Amir Ali, one of the highest recruits in the state of Arizona. Then they had a good transfer class too. They added a bunch of guys, but in particular, they brought in 3 players. You brought in Basheer Jihad, who, in my opinion, has been the best player on this team this year. BJ Freeman and Alston Mason. Now, those 6 guys, along with some returners with Adam Miller and Sean Phillips Jr., have basically made up your team. And we're going to talk about that in detail later on. But there's a lot of really, really good basketball players here, and they're wasting it. I mean, start with Quaintance and Sanon. Like, Quaintance by himself, this kid, the potential is sky high. And we've seen him get better with every passing game. At this point in time, I don't think it's debatable that Quaintance is the best player on the court for the Sun Devils. And again, he's getting better with every pass, with every passing week. Second most minutes for the Sun Devils this year, 31.4 minutes per game. He also just fouled out. Was it Saturday? Saturday against Iowa State. Or else he would have been able to add, I think he'd be north of 32 minutes at least if he was able to finish that game up. He's averaging 10.3 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game. He's almost a walking double-double. Those points have been steadily climbing too. And he's coming off of a bad game against Iowa State because prior to that, he was just double-double, double-double, double-double on a game-to-game basis. He's also averaging 3 blocks a game. I don't know if you know this. He has already set the freshman record for blocks in a season, and there's still a little less than half a season left to go for Quaintance. It's insane the things that he is able to do right now. And he's shooting at a high percentage, 54%. He's definitely going to get better on the line and converting free throws. And then there's work to be done with turnovers, but you'll notice that's a lot of these players. Sanon, Joson Sanon, he's also been pretty good. The problem is he's been banged up. He's essentially played 13 games. He suited up in another game. I can't remember which game it was, and was barely on the court. Otherwise, he's been dealing with a foot injury that he sustained against BYU. Against Iowa State over the weekend, that was essentially like his second Big 12 game. And prior to that, he was a really good player for you, and he's been one of the best scorers on this team. He's actually second on the team with 12.5 points per game. He is a ridiculous sharpshooter, 48.4% from deep, 47.4% from the field. So you're seeing from these two freshmen, these two 5-star freshmen, that Quaintance is nearing the status of averaging 10 points and 10 rebounds a game, and Sanon is arguably your best shooter and undoubtedly right now your most explosive player. You just haven't had him on the court. That sucks to be wasting those guys. Amir Ali, we really haven't seen too much out of him. It's averaging 12 minutes a game, 3.8 points. It's nothing noteworthy at this point in time. And I don't really know what the plan is for Amir Ali right now, but we'll have to wait and see. And then this transfer class, I think the transfer class was supposed to be the core of this team. And then you were going to have Quaintance and you were going to have Sanon as the players who elevated everything. But you haven't gotten that. BJ Freeman, he looks good in spurts. 13 points per game, 40.6% from the field. He is your second best free throw shooter, third best free throw shooter at 75.4%. We'll talk about the other two in a second. But he's your leading scorer in points per game, but he's hot and cold, and he has not been good enough in Big 12 play right now. The guy who has been more than good enough, and who, if it's not Jayden Quaintance, I would tell you Basheer Jihad has been the best player on this basketball team. He is averaging, 12.4 points? 12.4 points per game, 6.1 rebounds. He is shooting 46.4% from the floor, 74.8% from the line, which is definitely a problem, and especially a problem because that's where he's able to really be such a dominant player, is with the physicality he brings and then being able to get to the line, but he's not converting nearly as many as we need him to be converting. That was a problem last year. It's been a problem for a minute. Again, we'll talk about the problems coming up on the next segment of the show. But Jihad, phenomenal player. He's a turnover machine, man. He's given up the ball 3.1 times per game on average. That's got to get cleaned up. Alston Mason, I was hoping he would come in and replace Frankie Collins. I think that he's done that from a style standpoint, someone who runs the court. I think his defense is still good. It's definitely not Frankie Collins good, because Collins had the steals record for a single season last year for the Sun Devils. But Mason is still a good player, but I don't even know if I call it a consistency issue. I think you just kind of know what you have with Alston Mason. And he's someone that's going to be on the court a lot. I mean, he's averaging the most minutes per game with 35.6. I want him out there. I need him out there. But I also need more out of him than what we're getting right now. So looking at that group that they brought in, and then looking at Adam Miller, who was back from last year. And Adam Miller, when he's on, he's on. I mean, he is a very difficult player to stop, but he's his own worst enemy. And the shot selection, it was a problem last year, and it hasn't gotten much better this year. He is averaging, what is his field goal percentage? It's not ideal. 42.1%, which is better than I thought. 43.2% from three. That is the second best on the team behind Sanon, who's 48.4%. And he's your best free throw shooter at 79.4%. So Adam Miller, look, like I said, when he's on, he's on. But it doesn't even feel like a game-to-game thing. It doesn't feel like a half-to-half. It feels like a minute-to-minute kind of issue here with Adam Miller, where he'll have a 5-minute stretch where he just can't be stopped, but then he'll go 18 minutes and you don't even realize he's on the court. Like, you just need that consistency out of Adam Miller. And then Sean Phillips, the last guy I want to talk about. He's your big man. I love him. He's coming off a great game against Iowa State. I thought he had arguably the best game of any Sun Devil that saw the court, but he just doesn't get out there enough. And I think part of that is just because ASU has liked to run small ball over the last handful of years. And Phillips, as your lone 7-footer, is an outlier for a team that just likes these fast, quick guys that can move up and down the court rather than having the big, long, lanky dudes, but you need those guys on your roster. So I like the role Phillips is in. I do wish he would get more minutes. And I really do think that ASU, I wouldn't say they're wasting his potential, but I don't think they're getting the most out of them that he could. But the bottom line, yeah, this is a talented roster. There was a reason that Locked On Sun Devils host Richie Bradshaw was so high on this team going into this year. And I said dancing was going to be one of the goals and that I wanted to go to the Sweet 16. That's just a goal I have while I'm alive, is to see ASU go to a Sweet 16. I really hope we can get there. But I'll tell you, I thought this team was going to be their best chance. And they are on the outside looking in at best. They have a lot of work to do if they're going to turn the season around. And again, it's not impossible to turn the season around, but there are a lot of problems right now with this team. There are a lot of problems that need to be addressed. The good news is we know what they are. The bad news, I'm not 100% sure how they fix them or if they can fix them. We're talking about that coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as soon as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantees at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thanks as always for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. All right, let's go ahead and hop back into our conversation. Look, we know what the problems are. Now it's just a matter of fixing them. I don't know how many of these problems are fixable, but the good news is we know what they are. We can get that much done and identify them. There are 5 main issues here for the Sun Devils. 5 main issues. Let's start with number 1. In no particular order. The guard play is not good enough. It is not good enough. The top 3 guards on this team, BJ Freeman, Alston Mason, and Adam Miller. Those should be 3 of your most important players and 3 of your most consistent players. You do not have that consistency from them. BJ Freeman, he's the top scorer on average per game. There's games where I just feel like BJ Freeman, is leaving way too much on the court. I don't know if it's a shot selection thing. I don't know if it's just an inconsistency, period. If there's something else that's underlying there, but he has got to figure something out. When BJ Freeman is clicking and he is shooting and he is performing at a high level, ASU's offense is just running so much smoother. It feels like everybody is playing at a much higher level when you've got when you've got BJ Freeman shooting as well as he does. And at 40.6% from the field, that's just not good enough. Okay, let's look at Alston Mason. Again, I said that with Alston, you've got a guy who does a lot of things right from the point guard position for running everything, setting plays up. He's good defensively, but he's not scoring enough points for you. And that's just not good enough when you're the guy who's averaging the most minutes. 11.3 points per game. And it does not feel like he is averaging 11.3 points per game. Of the players who are the most inconsistent since Big 12 play started, it's between Freeman and Mason, and I feel like Mason is more, I wouldn't call him a non-factor, but it doesn't feel like you're getting what you need out of him right now. And then Adam Miller, like I said, he's streaky, man. He's hitting everything or he's hitting nothing, and it's within minutes of the same game. 9.6 points per game. I think that spells it out for you, especially when you look at some of his numbers, and it's like it feels like he should be better than 9.6 points per game. But there's games where he's double digits, and there's games where he has less than 5 points. That cannot happen. The guard play is just not good enough for this team. And then obviously Amir Ali is not much of a factor for this team this year. So between those four guys and Joson, Sanon, I don't know that I include Sanon in that part because he's been banged up and because he's been someone who comes off the bench. He's raw. He's a good shooter. There's good tendencies on defense for sure, but there's a lot to work on there. I would not factor in Ali, and I would not factor in Sanon into the equation with the bad guard play. It's really those three starters. Second thing, they are way too loose with the basketball right now. 13.6 turnovers per game for this team. I can't remember the last time they were under 10 turnovers. It's abysmal. And there's some guys that are just flat out liabilities, like Basheer Jihad, who I think is arguably the best player on this team. To me, it's him or it's Quaintance. With Quaintance's emergence lately, I probably take him, but Jihad has been one of your most consistent players for scoring, for defense, and for getting to the line. He needs to be better at converting on the line, but we already mentioned that. He needs to be way better with his ball handling, because 3.1 turnovers per game is abysmal. With 13.6 on average, he is averaging a little less than 25% of the turnovers per game. Jayden Quaintance also not good. 2.1 turnovers per game. But you quote unquote give him a pass because he's 17 years old and he's learning the game. Jihad is a last year player. This is the end of his eligibility. You cannot continue to be this person. That has to change. There's no excuses for it. Even Sean Phillips, who's only getting on the court for 13 minutes a game, is still averaging 1.5 turnovers. These have got to get cleaned up. You're wondering why you're not winning these games offensively. And it's because when you get those opportunities to get hot, all of a sudden the momentum's gone because of 2 straight turnovers. By the way, foul trouble continues to plague this team, not just for converting your free throws, but ASU is giving a lot of opportunities to their opponents. 18.6 personal fouls per game. 18.6. And most of the teams they play are doing a good job of converting their free throw opportunities. That and one opportunity, the 1-and-1 opportunities late in the game. Opposing teams are not having the same issues that the Sun Devils have been having on the line this year. So it's 2 ways for the Sun Devils. They're not making the most of their opportunities, and they're giving the opponents too many opportunities. I don't know how you fix that, though. Is it a coaching thing? Is it a discipline thing? Is it because these kids are young? Is it because everyone's just too aggressive? I don't know. And there's times where it feels like the refs refuse to swallow their whistles. But look at Iowa State. That was a heavily officiated game. And you look at the numbers and you're like, I can't believe how many whistles the refs called. But if you watch the game, you're like, it feels like more than half of those, probably more than 2/3 of the calls on ASU were deserved. It's got to change. And you can't blame the refs every single time. At some point, you've got to look at the team and go, fundamentally, what are we doing wrong? Where do we need to improve? Free throw shooting, I already mentioned that a little bit, but it's better than last year. Last year was 65.5%. Oh my God, that was a horrible year. I cannot believe we went a season shooting 65.5% from free throws. Like, they would get to the line and I'd tune out. I'd be like, they're not going to make it. This year, 70.3%. So you're up about 5%, 4.8%. It's still not good enough. I went into the year saying that needed to be like a worst case scenario, and that is certainly a worst case scenario. I was hoping you could get up 10%, closer to 75%. Now, it's a huge jump, I understand, but that's going to be the difference between winning and losing basketball games. Well, lo and behold, that's what's going on. Adam Miller, team high 79.4%. Jihad gets to the line. He's only converting 74.8%. Sanon is under 70%. Quaintance is a 50-50. There are not really any guys on this team that get to the line and I go, oh, we're going to convert that for sure. Like 79.4% for Miller. I'm happy with it, but I shouldn't be happy with 79.4%. It's missed opportunities. Last thing I want to mention is there's just no depth on this team. This was an issue last year. This was an issue the year before. It's just been a consistent issue over the last several years. There is no depth here. Now, I understand that injuries are a huge factor in everything that is going on right now, but let's take a look at this team. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players who have played all 19 games. Okay. That is essentially your starting lineup. And then Amir Ali has appeared in all 19 games. So like your 7th or 8th man. Sean Phillips has played in 18 games. That's your big man. You get him onto the court every once in a while. Joson Sanon has appeared in 14 games. And I'd basically say 13 games because one of the games he played, he barely played. That's a lot of missed time. And then after that, after those 8, not a single player has played more than 4 games. Injuries are a problem. Guys that just flat out can't play are a problem. There are way too many players on this roster that are just not contributing. And some of it is not their fault. I'm not pinning it on these players. But there's just not much there. And these guys are getting gassed, and it's not a good thing. Like Amir Ali is averaging the least amount of minutes of the 8 players that have appeared in at least half the season, at least double-digit games, and he's just not able to contribute as much as you would like him to contribute. Like, it feels like he's out there to give guys a breather instead of putting him out there knowing he can make a difference. And I do think Amir Ali can make a difference, but he's just not at that point, or there's something schematically wrong right now. But ASU's lack of depth is absolutely killing them. It killed them last year. It's just as bad this year. ASU is in a mess right now, but it's not too late. It's never too late. I'm going to tell you why coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better place to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. One last time, thanks to all of you for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. It's not too late. It's never too late. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no, and it ain't over now. If you understand that reference, please let me know in the comments. I got cooked the first time I heard that reference because I didn't know. I was informed, and now I know, and it's a great reference that I make almost every day at this point in time. It's not over, but there's a lot that needs fixing. There's a lot that's going right. Or at least there's a lot that's improved for ASU. Let's start with the obvious factor that this team is just more talented than last year. And the talent shows. Like, this is actually a team that is fun to watch. They're frustrating to watch, but at least when a game comes on, I'm excited to tune in. There were times last year it felt like a chore. Honestly, like, if it wasn't my job to stay up to date on Sun Devils basketball, I don't know how many games I'm watching last year. This year, I'm watching as much as I can because I know that this is a team worth watching. This is a team worth investing in. They're fun. They're talented. They're young, but they got veterans. They can shoot. They can play defense. There's a lot there to enjoy, to experience with this team. There's names. There's Jayden Quaintance. There's Joson Sanon. There's Adam Miller. There's Basheer Jihad. Like, there's players that you see on a game-to-game basis, and you're like, hey, I remember him last week. He dropped 12 points. He dropped 15 points. He had double-digit rebounds. Jayden Quaintance had 5 blocks. Like, there's guys worth talking about. There's guys that are worth having conversations and having a good time with. It's fun. It's exciting to watch. Speaking of the blocks and the steals and all of that good stuff, is the defense is there for the Sun Devils more often than not. And ASU's defenses haven't been the problem the last couple of years, but this year it feels like they were able to step up from last year. Last year, Frankie Collins had over 100 steals. This year, Quaintance is going to flirt with 100 blocks. Blocks are, I would say, maybe a little more exciting than steals. It was pretty cool to see Frankie just consistently poke the ball out. But what we're seeing from guys like Quaintance especially, and then with Jihad just being that big physical presence, Sanon is showing a lot of skills too defensively. This team is just exciting. Also, last year, free throw shooting sucked. It's better this year. You know what was worse than free throw shooting last year? Rebounding. This team was allergic to playing hard off the glass. That's not the case this year. Now, there's been times where ASU still gets out-rebounded, but goodness, are they doing a much better job this year. 36.3 rebounds per game. Quaintance averaging 8.5. Jihad 6.1. The two big men that you brought in this offseason have been reliable and have been the guys for you. Last year, Frankie Collins was your top rebounder. Frankie Collins is 6'1". That should have never been a thing. But he was asked to do everything. He was Superman for the Sun Devils last year. They don't win as many games as they did without Frankie, and they were under 500. But this year, you brought in the size, and that was my biggest priority. Going into the offseason, I said, you've got to get bigger. I appreciate small ball, and I think that ASU does a good job spreading the ball around. You had a lot of contributors last year, but you do not attack the glass nearly enough as you need to. And now not only are you rebounding, but they're playing much better in the paint too. That's where Quaintance has just been feasting so much. He's shooting 54% on his field goals, and a lot of it is inside the paint. It's beautiful. It's something that we desperately needed last year, and now we're getting it. So absolutely love what we're seeing in those departments. So they're capable of winning these games. They're more than capable. They're doing things right that they didn't do right last year. It's a ridiculously talented team. What did we say at the top of the show? This team is too talented to be underperforming at the level that they are. It's got to change, and I think they can. There are things that ASU just has to get better with, and it starts with the turnovers, man. I don't know how to fix it, because that's a mental thing. I can't just sit there, grab them by the ears and shake them and go, stop committing turnovers. I can't grab a phone and scream into it like I am in Liar Liar and tell them to stop breaking the law, followed by, you know what? I can't do that. I don't know how to get these kids to just figure out how to clean this stuff up. Quaintance, he's 17 years old. I can understand that it's an adjustment for him. Jihad is one of the most veteran players on this team, and he's turning the ball over more than anyone else. But again, it's not just him. They're averaging, oh my God, what did we say they're averaging for turnovers? 13.6 turnovers per game. And they have every single one of the players who has appeared in at least, well, not Amir Ali. A lot of guys are averaging turnovers. Amir Ali's only averaging a half turnover a game. Everyone else who has appeared in 14 or more games, 1.2 or higher. Sean Phillips is only playing 13 minutes a game. He's averaging a turnover and a half. You've just got to clean that stuff up. Alton Mason, 1.9. BJ Freeman, 1.8. Those are too high. They've got to cut down on that. They've got to get better with converting their free throws. They've got to get better with the consistency from start to finish. They play good defense. They play good offense. It does not feel like those things coexist at the same time. You need to play a full 40 minutes. Look at the Iowa State game. 35 minutes ASU was in control of that game. They led for the vast majority of that 35 minutes. You know how much they lost by? 15. That was the biggest lead at any point in the game was 7. And that was ASU, or up 40-33. That was the biggest lead. They lost by 15. How does that happen? You have got to play the entirety of the game. You cannot slow down on offense, and you certainly cannot slow down on defense, and that's what happened. You got to fix those. And then more than anything, I just need guys to see the roles they have and settle into them. Alston Mason, distribute, defend, be a shooter. Don't overthink it. BJ Freeman, you're the top scorer. Be more consistent. I need game-to-game consistency from you. If you're averaging 13 points a game, that's fine. I need you to average 13 points a game, not a 24-point game followed up by a 7-point game. 13 a game, and I can work with that. I can get the rest of the guys to step up. Basheer Jihad, you're my big man. You're physical. You know how to get to the line. Continue to do that. Adam Miller, that's my big shot guy. That is my big shot maker. When the game is on the line and I need a 3, I want it going to Adam, and I want him to start converting more often. Jayden Quaintance, that's my big man. That's my big defensive guy. He creates the turnovers, and he eats off the glass. That's my rebounder. And then Joson Sanon, that is my sharpshooter. I pull him off the bench, and I know that I've got a guy who's going to get a lot of minutes, and he's going to score a lot of points. Dude, what do we say? He's averaging 48.4% from three-point shooting. That's a special talent. With those 6 by themselves, plus the roles that you can get from Amir Ali and from Sean Phillips Jr. Settle into those roles. Stop trying to do everything. Just do what you're good at. Do what you're great at. Stop turning the ball over, and we'll be fine. So here's my to-do list. Number 1, clean up the turnovers. Number 2, have your players commit to their identity. And number 3, play a full 40 minutes offense and defense. It can't be one or the other. And it certainly can't be neither of them. You got to play a full 40 minutes. So is it over? It's not over. They got a lot of work to do, though. ASU, as of right now, 11-8 overall. They are 2-6 in Big 12 play. There are 12 games left. I talked about this on the live that went up on Saturday. If you did not see that, definitely tune in. That was a real fun time. We do lives every weekend, by the way. So if you miss one, first of all, they're archived. They're wherever you get your podcast. But also, right now we're on Saturdays because I'm not trying to compete with the NFL. We go live on Saturdays at 5 o'clock. I always have a notification. The best case scenario, in my opinion, is going 8-4 to finish the season, have a 10-10 record in Big 12 play, and find a way to make some noise in the Big 12 tournament. That is the best case scenario, and I don't know if that's realistic for ASU basketball at this time. It's not over. It wasn't over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. It's not over now. Adam Gontier said it's not too late. It's never too late. The old saying of not until the fat lady sings, whatever old saying or song lyrics or references you want to throw them into the comments so I can add them to my repertoire. What do you guys think? Is the season over, or do you have faith that Bobby Hurley can turn this team around? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at Richie Bradshaw36, and the podcast is there at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. You'll get the update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day, and a shout out my everydayers who are here every day. Thanks as always, guys. We've got a lot coming up for you guys. More basketball content is on the way, especially with the season winding down, and hopefully they can make a push to go to March Madness. I got a lot of questions about Cam Scadaboo, though. and what ASU's plan is to replace him. That's going to be coming up very, very soon, probably this week. So if you want to stay in touch with that, you need to hit subscribe and you need to turn on notifications so you know when it drops. I'll catch you guys next time. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.